Chapter 2. Supernatural versus Natural Man. One of the quiet goals of the Enlightenment was the disestablishment of churches and of Christianity. By its enthronement of nature and of natural law, it worked to supplant Christianity and God's law. In time, of course, natural law gave way to status law. The state was seen by Hegel as nature's supreme expression. A first step in this process of disestablishment was to reduce Christianity to an option for man, a matter of choice, not of necessity. The realm of necessity was held to be civil government. Freedom came to mean deliverance from the church to the state, from supernatural mandates and laws to quote-unquote natural and status laws. The Reformation had said plainly that biblical faith requires belief in God's predestination, in God's sovereign choice, whether or not men are elect or non-elect. This was reversed by the Enlightenment and then by Arminianism. Sovereign choice was transferred to man. Man, it was held, had the option to choose God or to reject him, to declare God to be elect or non-elect. Second, a logical consequence of this position was, for man, to reject the triune God and Christianity and to ban this faith as, quote, inimical to man and to a free, democratic or republican society. This step the French Revolution, and especially the Marquis de Sade, took boldly. Christianity holds this world to be a created order and therefore totally dependent upon the triune God. John 1:3 says of God the Word, quote, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. End quote. This absolute dependency is of the world upon God, not upon the church. After Darwin especially, this dependency was denied, and instead men in the world order were seen as rather dependent on the state. Especially since World War II, there has been a steady growth of hostility to God and Christianity in the name of freedom. If the natural order is determinative, then any supernatural law or mandate is an infringement on human freedom. A ban on God's law is therefore sought. The issue is between supernatural man and natural man, between Jesus Christ and his new humanity, and a fallen Adam and his unregenerate humanity. In 1938, Eugen Rosenstock-Huessey's Out of Revolution, the Autobiography of Western Man, was published. It was, in effect, an account of the great counter-revolution of the natural man against the supernatural man, Jesus Christ, and his new humanity. The Luther of this counter-revolution was a fictional character, Faust, in particular Goethe's Faust. Men sought a re-migration from Israel to nature, from a covenanted people to a natural one. They sought, in effect, an ark to take them back, unlike Noah, to the world before the flood, to a world where men lived very long lives in contempt of God. Quote, natural law bore the proud name of a sacrament. End quote. In the world of the Enlightenment, quote, the princes took over the functions of the popes, the successors of Peter. End quote. In this world of the natural man, the Bible is anathema. The state school textbook for sex education, changing bodies, changing lives, says in its opening pages, quote, there isn't any rule book, there's no right way or right age to have life experiences. End quote. There can, in this perspective, be no right nor wrong, because there can be no rule book, no Bible. Whatever is good is natural and therefore good. Evil is the anti-natural and therefore supernatural or Christian. Hitler is seen as evil simply by associating him with Christianity, even though he was an atheist, anti-Christian, and a nationalistic Marxist. The premise in school sex education classes is that there are no right or wrong answers, quote, just your answers, end quote. The textbook, Learning About Sex, states, quote, I cannot judge the rightness or wrongness of any of these behaviors. Instead, I hope that you can find the sexual lifestyle which is best for your life. End quote. Not surprisingly, many educators work to bar any teaching on biblical morality. Chastity is often a forbidden subject because it represents the standards of supernatural man. Before sex education spread through state schools in the 1970s, teenage pregnancy had been declining over a period of more than a dozen years, but it rose sharply with the introduction of sex education classes. Since the goal of such teaching was and is to further the triumph of natural man, it must be said that the results are desired results. As against the biblical view that humanity outside of Christ is fallen, totally depraved and in sin, the humanists assert the natural goodness, or at least moral neutrality of the natural man. Carl Rogers, very influential in these educational circles that enthrone the natural man, has held that necessary to sound education is, quote, a profound trust in the human organism, end quote. Values clarification teaching works to deliver the child from biblical laws into a totally personal and relativistic, quote-unquote, morality. As one teacher at least has insisted, is it right for you? No moral arbiter exists beyond the natural man. As a result, fornication, adultery, homosexuality and other lawless practices are affirmed to be natural and are promoted. Christian standards are derided and pure values are stressed. Such teachings are, as Sowell noted, quote, pretentious mush, end quote, but they are still poisonous in their pretensions. Their implicit goal is anarchy. If every man's values are valid in the sphere of sexual morality, why not follow Sade's logic in the spheres of theft and murder? Karl Marx rightly feared the logic of Max Stirner. Stirner saw that, given the truth of atheism, there could be no law governing man in any sphere. Every man would be his own law. The key sentence in Judges, repeated more than once, is, quote, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which is right in his own eyes. Judges 21:25. Having rejected God as their king and lawgiver, every man was his own God, king, and law. Margaret Mead, who was hardly a friend of God and not at all favourable to a biblical faith, still observed, in a book very antithetical to Christianity, quote, the question of morality, of the public observance of declared standards of tolerable and intolerable forms of petty corruption, of the interaction between different systems of morality, loyalty and rake-off, present an acute problem to our interdependent world in many ways. Social life is based on the trustworthiness of others in the same system, end quote. She saw the need for some common ground, but she sought it in man, end quote, the trustworthiness of others in the same system, end quote. This trustworthiness has been singularly lacking. It has been abundantly evident, especially since World War II and the decline of attention to biblical law, that men and nations are not trustworthy. What sanctions, then, can the nations provide against, quote, intolerable, end quote, actions on the part of men and nations? The United Nations has been the answer, and military coercion, but in terms of what moral standard? Repeated evils have been routinely overlooked, while action has been taken in other cases on political grounds. The United Nations has not advanced morality because it has none. Its existence, moreover, is a contradiction. If the natural man is normative, then why should there be nation-states or a world state? The earlier anarchists were logical. If nature is normative and man is naturally good, then the state is an obstruction to a free, happy and prosperous social order. Indeed, for these anarchists, There were and are two impediments to the free and happy society. First, of course, there is Christianity, with its insistence on supernatural man and its negative view of natural man. The freedom of man, it was held, requires the elimination of Christianity. Second, there's the state. Because it introduces coercion into human action, it prevents freedom and therefore is an enemy of natural man. The anarchists, however, lacked the honesty of the Marquis de Sade because they assumed the natural goodness of man. They gave man a moral nature, and in this respect they were still in the fold of Christianity because they assumed that men have a moral nature. The concept of natural man, however, requires that we believe, with Nietzsche, that man must awaken to the fact that God is dead and we must live beyond good and evil. Earlier, the Marquis de Sade had vindicated every crime conceivable as valid because it occurred in nature. Nothing, therefore, could be condemned without giving assent to the standards of supernatural man. To condemn anything in the world of nature as evil is, logically, a heresy for humanism. It's like saying that some aspect of the biblical God is evil. It leads to a radical collapse of whatever faith it is that adopts such a position. It has often been pointed out that the Marquis de Sade did not practice as many perversions as were routine among the aristocracy of his day. Of course, he was in prison too much of his life to be able to do so. In his writings, however, he was insistently logical in stating that to believe in natural man means to accept all practices other than those governed by the supernatural God and his word as acceptable. No ground exists for natural man to condemn any natural human act on extraneous grounds. Every natural act is its own justification. No standard outside the act is permissible. Max Stirner agreed with this. He wrote in The Ego and His Own, quote, "Take notice how a, quote, moral man, end quote, behaves, who today often thinks he is through with God and throws off Christianity as a bygone thing. If you ask him whether he has ever doubted that the copulation of brother and sister is incest, that monogamy is the truth of marriage, that filial piety is a sacred duty, etc., then a moral shudder will come over him at the conception of one being allowed to touch his sister as wife also, etc. And whence this shudder? Because he believes in those moral commandments. This moral faith is deeply rooted in his breast. Much as he rages against the pious Christians, he himself has nevertheless as thoroughly remained a Christian, to wit, a moral Christian. In the form of morality, Christianity holds him a prisoner, and a prisoner under faith. Monogamy is to be something sacred, and he who may live in bigamy is punished as a criminal. He who commits incest suffers as a criminal. Those who are always crying that religion is not to be regarded in the state, and the Jew is to be a citizen equally with the Christian, show themselves in accord with this. Is not this incest and monogamy a dogma of faith? Touch it, and you will learn by experience how this moral man is a hero of faith too, not less than Krummacher, not less than Philip II. These fight for the faith of the Church, he for the faith of the state, or the moral laws of the state. For articles of faith both condemn him who acts otherwise than their faith will allow. The brand of crime is stamped upon him, and he may languish in reformatories and jails. Moral faith is as fanatical as religious faith. They call that, quote, liberty of faith, end quote, then, when brother and sister, on account of a relation that they should have settled with their, quote, conscience, end quote, are thrown into prison. Quote, but they set a pernicious example, end quote. Yes, indeed, others might have taken the notion that the state had no business to meddle with their relation, and thereupon, quote, purity of morals, end quote, would go to ruin. So then, the religious heroes of faith are zealous for the, quote, sacred God, end quote, the moral ones for the, quote, sacred good, end quote, end quote. If we understand what Stirner held, then we can grasp the direction and meaning of sex education in our state schools, of the arguments used by homosexuals in demanding their version of life, and we can understand why more and more judges are delivering decisions after the manner of Sade. A homosexual San Francisco, California supervisor has declared, quote, "This campaign is a spiritual war," end quote. If we establish society on the premises of natural man, then it follows, as the California Court of Appeals held in 1991, that sodomy is a constitutional right. The state Supreme Court held the issue to be unresolved until the scope of, quote, "the right to privacy," end quote, could be determined. However, given the prevailing premise of the priority of the natural man, if not the exclusivism of the natural, the homosexual faith will prevail unless the priority of the supernatural man, Jesus Christ, and his law word are re-established and extended.